Okay, I will call the work session of the Pawtucket School Committee to order at 6:41. I apologize for the delay. We did have a subcommittee meeting that ran just a little bit over. Ms. List, will you please take a roll call?
Mr. Charbonneau?
Here.
Mr. Knight?
Here.
Mr. Larby?
Here.
Mr. Marino?
Here.
Ms. Doobie?
Here, please rise to the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First on our agenda, we have public participation. Ms. List, do we have anyone signed up?
No.
Okay, we'll move on to our next item, which is presentation. Dr. McWilliams.
Yes, good evening, everyone. And as I had stated earlier at the beginning of the year, each time we come together on a work session in a full school committee meeting, we want to bring before you a brief presentation of things that are going on across our district. So as they're coming up, Mr. Mike Gilmore from Agnes Little and Miss Emily Malozzi, we're going to ask you to come up, and as you're preparing to, I know Hirsch is talking about your presentation right now, as you're preparing to present, I would like to say that it's a pleasure to, and I hope that you've been enjoying them the last few meetings that we've had. It is really good. It's a great opportunity to see what is happening across our district, whether it's working with those in central office or in our schools. We just want to keep the positivity going. And on that note, while they're getting ready, because they're still chatting, I would like to put a face to a name. So I'd like to introduce you to Mr. Andrew, known as Drew Lagasse, and he's our new communications liaison. So we are excited to have him on board and working alongside with us to push out all the positive things that are going on in our schools. So you will be hearing and seeing from him from quite often.
All right, good evening, everyone. How are you tonight? Thank you in advance for having us here tonight to present our favorite subject. My name is Mike Gilmore. I'm the principal at Agnes Little Elementary School, and Emily Malozzi is our community school coordinator at Agnes Little. And we just like to tell you a little bit about our school, which is one of our favorite topics. So we thank you for hosting us tonight. So our enrollment is presently at 343 students. We're a K through 5 school. We presently have 3 of each grade level. We are a 100% free school with through our CEP program, which I just want to expound on that a little bit. And I know many people in this room are those who are making the decisions to to get us into programs like the CEP program. And it is a wonderful situation as a leader of the school. Yes, there's paperwork on the back end, but the kids don't see that, right? And we get paid to do a job, and my job is to do the stuff that's behind the scenes. And what the students see is that they get to come in, they get a breakfast, and they get a lunch without worry, without hassle. So I thank you for that, for your efforts in helping me make that transition from some of the obstacles we've had in the past to what we have now, which is a very smooth running program that benefits students. And so again, I thank you for that. Presently, we have breakfast in the classroom. That's working out. It's a little different, right? Through COVID and whatnot, we've had a little bit of an adjustment, but it's basically a working breakfast. And I know Mr. Beaupre is over here, and hi, Mr. Beaupre. There's very interesting things. I'll use him as an example. In his classroom, he's not only having them eat their breakfast, but they're doing a lot of SEL stuff, right, during that time, right? Maybe they're listening to, so Mr. Beaupre's class is the place you want to be at 8:31, 8:33, around that time. It is so calm. There's music playing. I feel like I'm doing yoga, right? Yeah. You just, there's a sense of calm that while they're having breakfast in the classroom, which by the way, they didn't have to worry about, it's there. They didn't have to worry if their parents filled out the form or whatever it was. It's there. They get to eat their breakfast and get their day started on the right foot. So these are the little things I want to point out to you on a daily basis that makes life great for students, staff, and myself. We are a community school, and like I said, I introduced Emily, which I think many of you know Emily. She is an integral part of our school and the community-based supports that we have that wrap around our kids. And that is something I hope to see grow more and more with every year. Presently, as you know, we have 3 community schools in the district, and Agnes Little was the first. And, you know, I know I'm partial, but the best. So maybe I should have said that out loud, right? But we are the Little Dolphins. And when I arrived at Little, I said, why are we the Little Dolphins? I don't, right? So I came from Winters, and we were the Winters Wildcats. And why are we the Little Dolphins? We're the Little Dolphins because think of a school of dolphins. Took me a little while to put that together, and I realized, oh, we're a school of dolphins. So that's where our mascot comes from, the Little Dolphins. And in terms of our school-wide behavior, our expectations, we are responsible, we are respectful, and we are problem solvers. So if you allow me to brag a little bit, right? There's Kelly Burgol in that window there, our vestibule. We have many facility upgrades over the past, and I'm going to say 2 years because it seems like we haven't gotten back to normalcy in the last 2 years. We feel like we're just getting there now, but we now have ceiling fans. Doesn't sound like too much because we probably all have them at our house, but air moving throughout a building is very conducive to learning. And it's really wonderful to have this new addition, which happened over the last 6 months or so. In terms of security, we have a new vestibule, we have cameras, we have exterior lighting. Walking to your car is not in the dark anymore. You could see where you're walking. When we have events at night, we can have the parents feel confident that they're walking through a safe and secure parking lot. All our doors have the fob system on it. All our staff has their fob key to gain entrance into whatever doors. And what you can't see there is that's the vestibule, and obviously to the left is the outside door, and then that's the secondary door there. So we set up the vestibule to be a little welcoming, which is nice because, you know, we have security plus we have a welcoming environment. Many of our rooms, this might not seem like a big deal to you, and I'm just pointing out these little things because many of our rooms would have the light shining on the computers. And when it would shine on a presentation or a computer, the students can't see, right? And that's so disruptive to the learning when the hands are going up. I can't see the board, I can't see the board. Well, we have room darkening shades. And in any and every room that was needed. And I worked with Lisa Ramsey on that, and I thank you for that, Lisa, for helping me get that together. And John Cody, and we have every single room that needed it now has the room darkening shades. The main office has a professional aesthetic, which we're teaching students how to be professional, even at the K-5 level. It's a very important life lesson, and so we should walk the walk, right? And our office certainly looks professional, and that's what they deserve, our students. We have new boilers, which means many of you at the tables here have had a hand in that, and the heat is now turned on. So I can tell you, thank you. Thank you for my teachers. I have some of my teachers here, and we thank you for this new addition where it's a very level heating system at this point, as opposed to one room is 60 and one room is 85. So thank you for that. We have fresh paint all throughout the building. Wherever we needed it, we have been improving the paint and the aesthetics throughout the building. And in terms of safety, our parking lot lines are repainted. We did that a few years ago, and they're wonderful, and they designate where our bus lines are and things like that. So it's a district-wide iReady initiative, but just in terms of how do we adjust it to Agnes Little, how do we utilize our incentives, our iReady program to try to improve our scores, but also motivate our students. So we have weekly data tracking and goal monitoring. Our students presently earn rewards for hitting time on task and growth benchmarks. You know, there's nothing like some sort of prize at the end of the rainbow to motivate K-5 students. And we're very fortunate that you'll see the last bullet there. I have a math interventionist now who's working hand in hand with our reading interventionist and our reading resource teacher, and tracking our iReady growth and time on task. We've implemented these different rewards, and that's something new for us this year. And seems to be working out great because our numbers are way up, both in terms of growth and both in terms of time on task. We're fortunate that we have our ramp up after school program presently running. It's targeted instruction. I have 7 to 9 teachers assisting me with that. And we're targeting certain students that need that extra help. So we not only have our COSI program, but we also have our ramp up running at the same time. Books Are Wings are practically live in our building, thanks to Emily setting that up and getting us to the point where they're part of our Agnes Little family, and they're constantly and giving out free books, working with our librarian, working with Emily. One unique thing about that is we have a kiosk, if you will, right at the front doors. So while our bus students are waiting, they are just eating books left and right, and they're taking them home, and these are free books. They know that while they're waiting for the bus, they have a book that they could take home. They're reading it at the YMCA, they're reading it at home, they're reading it while they wait. And Books of Wings are a great partner, community partner to us. And like I said, we have our math interventionist who works hand in hand, which is a new position for Agnes Little. In terms of social emotional, the way we motivate students, we have monthly school events and prizes, and they vary. So the school prize, right now the incentive is a Chromebook. So you can win your own Chromebook. No, Hirsch, it is not one of your Chromebooks. It is a separate Chromebook that they would bring home. And what you would do is you would earn your Dolphin dollars. Every staff member has a bunch of Dolphin dollars on them. And if you see a good act, you see something positive, some sort of positive behavior, you're rewarding them with a Dolphin dollar. And you may redeem those Dolphin dollars, and they literally look like dollar bills with a dolphin on them. You may redeem those dollars for events, prizes. About a week or so ago, we did an extra recess where Emily and I and some of the staff went out into the football field next door, and they got an extra half hour of recess. And so like I said, for 10 Dolphin dollars, they're learning monetary values, and they're learning how to save, how to spend. And so very many 20th century life lessons in that. We have a Little Buddies mentoring program. Those are for our students who need added support. Basically what Emily does is she puts out an email and says, staff, are you willing to take a buddy and mentor them? And we have many staff members willing to do that. And as the need arises, we set those students and pair them with the teacher that would work best. And then Yale Ruler is part of our social emotional program that Emily, myself, and my social worker are attending and working through now. That's, I think I'm turning over the mic to Emily next, just to make sure. And so at this point, again, I thank you, and I just want to welcome Emily Malozzi to the stand.
Hi, good evening. In terms of health and wellness initiatives at our school, we do a great deal. This is because this is based on the needs of our community. In Pawtucket, we have a number of health factors that greatly impact student learning. So we like to offer programs that support students and families with these issues. And so one of the things that we do is have a farm to school initiative. And we do this by our local monthly taste test in the cafeteria. Each month, our food service provider partners with a local farm to purchase a fresh produce item from the farm. They make it into a delicious recipe, and they serve it up in our cafeteria with samples. We get parents to come into our cafeteria and serve the samples to our students, and those parents are our local food ambassadors who are really interested in getting more locally grown produce into our school meals. And overall, the kids vote on whether they like that produce item and if they want to see it in our meals, and continue to support local farmers and get fresh, locally grown food into our school meals. Our school also offers yoga, which has many health benefits, but also a social emotional factor as well. Our partners at Shri Yoga for a number of years now have written grants on our behalf so they can partner with us and give us free programming. They do this with all three of our community schools actually, and they keep providing us services year after year completely for free based on their own grant writing, based on our partnerships and relationships we've built with them over the years. This year we were a pilot for the Road to Safety bicycle safety curriculum offered by the Rhode Island Department of Transportation Office of Highway Safety. As you can see from the picture, we had instructors come in and actually trained our students on proper bike safety, and they got to do bike riding right during the school day in their phys ed class. Some kids had to completely learn how to ride a bike, but that was fine. They actually did in this amount of time, just a 2-week program. And others who were more advanced got to learn the rules of the road and proper signaling and bike safety parts of the bike, and of course helmet wearing. And they all also got free helmets from that program. Our whole 5th grade participated in this program, and it's just a way to make our streets safer, make our communities safer for kids, and encourage healthy ways of getting around. We also have food distribution with our partners at the Pawtucket Backpackers. That's a local little nonprofit agency run totally by parent volunteers, and their capacity has been much lower in the last couple of years due to COVID and the lack of volunteers, but we are still one of the schools that work with them. I think there's 4 total, our 3 community schools and 1 other school. And when I put out the reach to parents about who would be, interested in having some extra food support with these weekly food bags, we got over 40 families ask for this food help. That is over 10% of our population. So you can see there's still a need of food in our community. I just think that's important to highlight. And we have partners who are helping us, and we're getting these food bags out to families every week with their help, of course. We offer nutrition education yearly with our partners at URI. This is also offered with collaboration with our phys ed and health teachers. This year, our school was chosen for asthma education with lifespan. Again, you can see the data there showing that over 13% of our students have asthma. So this is a large need in our community overall, especially in our school, but throughout Pawtucket. And so this asthma education course offers education to families and students, but also there's a staff training component. And there's also a home visiting program that they'll actually go in and assess the student's house and help to look for triggers of their asthma. And this is important because asthma keeps kids out of school sometimes, right? If they're walking to school, the pollution in the air, the change of seasons, pollen in the air, different weather, all of these are asthma triggers. And at home, it could be things like pets or just living environments there, smoking, all of these things in their homes could also cause their asthma flare up and then them to miss school because their breathing is dysregulated. So having these programs is super important, not only for kids' health, but to keep them in school. And then karate is a program we've offered for a number of years too with our partners at USA Karate. Martial arts has a number of benefits, including self-confidence and discipline and just overall health benefits as well. But that's a great program, and they also push into our phys ed classes and teach students that way. And family engagement is always huge in our school. It's a big part of community schools in general. We have a very active PTO, which we call Friends of Little. They constantly plan really fun family activities throughout the year for our families. It's made up of, parents and teachers alike, this group. And then throughout the year, they do fundraising too, and that helps run those family programs, and then also gives things right back to our school in terms of things teachers need and end of year celebrations, field day, stuff like that, that they're able to support our school with from their fundraising efforts all year long. And then we make it a point to have frequent two-way communication with our families. Kinvo has been a large part of that, and that's a new initiative the district implemented this year that offers that two-way communication with text messaging and email. And that's been a great tool just to have more frequent, consistent communication with parents. It's just a few clicks of a button and we can have conversations with parents. So that's been a great tool this year. And it complements our regular Facebook, which we post all the time, but that also has a instant messaging or direct messaging function as well. That we have a large Facebook following, and so I know a big part of our community communicates with us that way. And then we do monthly newsletters, and these newsletters are really important. They not only highlight activities and programs and initiatives and events that our school is hosting, but they also offer a plethora of community resources as well. I make it a point to stay really connected to things that are happening in the community, workshops, resources, programs, things for kids and parents alike. And then I compile everything and put it out in this monthly newsletter. So it's really informative. It can be things for high school age kids, for parents, for preschoolers. It really ranges, and there's different sections. Sometimes we shout out parents who are doing great things. Sometimes we shout out our teachers who are doing great things. So it's really all inclusive and a great way to keep our community engaged and involved. Then we also offer numerous opportunities for volunteering throughout the year and really encourage our parents to come in and get involved. We want to make sure that they feel welcomed and part of our school community and that they are our partners in their child's education. And so whenever we can get them in the building, we like to do that. As I mentioned before, they are part of our local food ambassadors program. There are four there pictured in the slideshow, and those were the four moms who participated last month in our local foods cafeteria taste test. And there's even a few more who couldn't come that day, but will be there next month for that. And that's the monthly basis that they're committing to. And they're just right there, part of our, cafeteria staff for that day. And what's interesting to mention there too is that one of our moms who started to participate in our local foods ambassadors program a few years ago has actually graduated and now has our paid cafeteria monitor position. And I just think that's incredible when we give parents the opportunity to be involved in our schools, and it can lead to some really interesting and great leadership positions for them, all because we kind of opened our doors and encouraged them to be part of our school community. And then we also have our Ramp Up program, which we do have a parent volunteer who's helping in the classrooms after school doing some academic initiatives as well. And I think that's it. Our little motto is that you just can't hide that dolphin pride. We're open to any questions, but we just want to say thank you for letting us present about our school this evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that presentation. Any questions from the committee? Mr. Charbonneau.
Madam Chair, just a couple of comments.
You ever go visit Principal Gilmore's school, wherever he is in the district, and he always has a way of walking you around the school, showing you things that you've done and how you've contributed to the success of the school, and he works in things that still need to be done. So I enjoy the presentation, and while I appreciate the credit, I think when we talk about community schools, it's really, Little has set the standard, and we approved it, but it was a collaborative effort, if not driven by the AFT leadership, Mr. Beaupre, Mr. Pree, and the leadership team who brought the idea to us back 5-6 years ago. And I think it's important that we recognize that, because not only did Mr. Beaupre and the leadership team come to us with an idea and a solution to an issue we were having, but they also came with resources. They brought money to the table and said, listen, we believe in this, and we're going to put some money here, and we want you to partner with us. So when you have that open collaboration across all channels in the district, it leads to successes like this. So when we rolled it out, Little was going to be the only school that did it. But what you all did at Little came back to us and said, you know what, this is a success, and we need to do more of this in the district. And I think when we look at, again, a collaboration across all areas of the school district, often call Ms. Devine and say, Melissa, can we do this? Can we afford more of this? And Melissa always finds a way to come back to us and say, listen, we can have another school. Why don't we have another school? And I think, I apologize for the long-windedness, but my comment is, you folks did this. We did the easy part and approved it. The union leadership came to the table with the idea, with resources behind it, and then it was up to you guys to execute. And Emily, you're a rock star in this district. And, you know, I call on you occasionally, but I see the work you do at all the little events. And, you know, I think that's why we've continued to build on the community school model, because you have all made it such a success for the district. So I appreciate the presentation, but more so the work you've all done around the community school model. So thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Charbonneau, you said it for us all. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, give you guys a second to grab your computer. We'll move on to our next item, approval of Gilbane GMP Winters Elementary School. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm gonna move on to the next item, virtual instruction day plan ride.
Second.
It's been a motion to table virtual instruction day plan by Mr. Larby. It's been seconded by Mr. Moreno. Ms. Lissy, please take a roll call.
Mr. Charbonneau,
Yes.
Mr. Knight,
Yes.
Mr. Larby,
Yes.
Mr. Marino,
Yes.
Ms. Doobie.
Yes, virtual instruction day plan has been tabled unanimously. We'll move on to our next item, approval of Gilbane GMP Winters Elementary School. Collier's coming up.
All right. Good evening, everyone,
Good evening.
and thank you. This is a very exciting moment. Over the past many months, you've had the opportunity to review in great detail each and every piece that will go into Winters Elementary School, as Jared has presented to you all of the bits and pieces that we've bought by division. So he's of course with us this evening, as is the executive team from Gilbane, and we thank them very much for their partnership in helping us come up with a projected on budget, on time project. So great to be bought out and on budget and on time. You have in your packet a recommendation that you approve this guaranteed maximum price contract in the amount of $41,900,819. That fits very snugly within our base and contingency budget for that portion of the project. We were holding just over $42 million for that. So again, just under budget, projecting on time, and a great moment to be able to finish the buyout and full speed ahead to open next fall.
Motion approved.
Second.
It's been a motion to approve the Gilbane GMP Winters Elementary School by Mr. Moreno. It's been seconded by Mr. Charbonneau. Discussion. Mr. Knight, then Mr. Charbonneau.
What kind of a liquidated damages clause is there?
Do you know off the top of your head, Jared?
I know that each particular subcontractor has a liquidated damage of $3,000 per calendar. Sorry. There is a liquidated damage clause of $3,000 per calendar day for each of the subs specific to their trades.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you on that. Specific what?
Specific to their trades. So each specific trade that is in the GMP has a liquidated damages clause of $3,000 per calendar day.
The next question I have. With Winter, not Winters, Kevin McCabe?
Sure. So the one thing that we're experiencing that's not so dissimilar to what we experienced at Kirvin McCabe is the global supply chain problem. Thankfully, we were able to learn an awful lot at Kirvin McCabe. We've taken a number of steps to order early, pivot where necessary, and really pay much closer attention to things like the new roof that'll be going on the building. And both Tony and Cheryl Ben behind us have been excellent partners in that regard. So no project is without any problems. Our job is to make sure as many of them go away as possible so that they don't surface to you all at these meetings. But we're in good shape at the moment, but that doesn't mean we're not working very hard on minimizing any impact.
Mr. Knight, you good? Okay. Mr. Charbonneau?
No, I was just going to make an overall comment that I support this. I'll be voting yes. I think the work that Gilbane has, I think the work they presented us as being able to execute, from what I've seen to this point, they've certainly executed that. There has been as minimal, I think, disruption to that neighborhood as could have been hoped for. And I recognize that that doesn't happen by accident, so I certainly thank Colliers and Gilbane, and I fully support this.
Seeing no further discussion, Ms. Leslie, please take a roll call.
Mr. Charbonneau?
Yes.
Mr. Knight?
Yes.
Mr. Larby?
Yes.
Mr. Marino?
Yes.
Ms. Doobie?
Yes, motion carries unanimously. The next item we have is approval of architect contract at Baldwin Elementary School.
Second.
It's been a motion to approve the architect contract at Baldwin Elementary School by Mr. Charbonneau. It was seconded by Mr. Moreno. And we have Colliers presenting this as well, I imagine.
I'm happy to present it. I'm actually going to do a little introduction and reintroduce you all to Chris Spiegel. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have because I was involved personally with the negotiation process, but Chris will be rejoining the Pawtucket team. He had helped us early on. He is just coming off of the leadership role in successfully completing major renovations and additions to 3 schools in Smithfield. And I know we'll be an excellent partner. We always make sure that we bring the best staff to Pawtucket, and Chris is certainly no exception there. So like I said, I will be waiting in the wings if there are questions he can't answer, but Chris, take us through it.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me today. As Derek said, I did start my career with Colliers here in Pawtucket, and I'm really happy to be back. The work that you guys have done is an example to other school districts. As the chair and the superintendent know, I recently took another school district about a month ago through the Nat Green School, just so they could see how things have been done and how great things can be done. Before you today in your packets, we have a recommendation to award designer services for Elizabeth Baldwin Elementary School. After review of the attached proposal from Toronto Architects and its associated subconsultants and negotiations undertaken on the owner's behalf, we recommend approval of the aforementioned proposal in the amount of $4,386,500.00. The price as proposed is 9.35% of the construction budget of $46,900,000.
There's already a motion to approve, actually, Mr. Larby. Any discussion? Mr. Charbonneau?
Just one comment. 935 of the construction budget. That seems a little bit higher than we're accustomed to. Is that based on market conditions and
So I'm going to hand it off to Derek. He was negotiating.
Yeah, sure. So I'm happy to answer that. This is a great question. So typically in Pawtucket, we've paid 7 to 8%, a little bit more than 8% on newer, on new large builds such as this. We're up in that 8% range. This is starting to creep a little bit higher. I think part of it is making sure that we appreciate the idea that the Toronto levy team is coming in having not had the benefit of doing stage 1, stage 2. So there is some cost associated with that of getting them up to speed, as well as, I think to your point, market conditions. I will say that between myself, Attorney Connolly, and Lewis's team, the number that you see before you has been significantly negotiated down. When we looked at all of Mr. Toronto's subcontractors and what we felt and he felt he would need to complete the job, we started up well north of 10% overall in negotiation, and there's a lot of things involved in this, but we've realized a savings in excess of $1.3 million from the original proposal. So we feel we've done our due diligence. We think he and we understand that he's bought the appropriate people and that it's a good value.
I see any other questions. Chris did mention, and welcome to the Pawtucket team, and that school district was East Greenwich that asked to tour Nat Green to see what effective school construction looks like before they remodel their schools. This school committee member from East Greenwich reached out and said that he was blown away by what he saw and hopes to make it a reality in East Greenwich for the East Greenwich kids. Mr. Charbonneau.
Just to piggyback that, for those who may not know, Toronto Architects designed the work at Green and Potter Burns. So we are excited to see what Mr. Toronto and his team can do with a blank canvas, so to speak, at Baldwin. But we're getting kudos for tours of schools that the architect we're awarding this to has designed. So, Mr. Toronto, thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, Ms. Leslie, please take a roll call.
Mr. Charbonneau?
Yes.
Mr. Knight?
Yes.
Mr. Larby?
Yes.
Mr. Marino?
Yes.
Ms. Doobie?
Yes, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you. The motion carries 5-0. Okay, the next item on our agenda is the approval of the Rhode Island Department of Education School Construction MOA Amendment Number 4, reallocation of funds. Ms. Devine.
Good evening, everyone. Before you, we have a memorandum of agreement for school construction. It's amendment number 4 for the reallocation of funds for the $36 million approval. This $36 million construction is a variety of health and safety projects. The original memorandum of agreement was approved by the Department of Education in 2017. The school budgets have been updated to show savings from completed projects where that were the immediate health and safety projects. This update, along with some other savings and completed projects at other location and the application of expenses to older construction approval, has allowed the district to request a reallocation to complete the immediate health and safety project, the expansion of the HVAC project at Curve and McCabe that included the fire suppression, HVAC, the roof, and the skylights, correct. It is our request that you approve as presented the reallocation of the budget before you.
Motion approved.
Second.
There's been a motion to approve the reallocation of funds by Mr. Marino. It's been seconded by Mr. Charbonneau. Discussion. Mr. Charbonneau.
I'll defer to my colleagues. I have a few things on this. So Melissa, when we talked, the estimated budget for Curve and McCabe has increased to approximately $10 million.
Correct.
The award, the initial award was for $6.5 million, or thereabouts, $6.5 to $7 million for the rooftop units.
Construction for the rooftop, for the HVAC, and for the fire suppression. That was like
Right.
6.3 change, 6.4.
So the fire suppression's been done and closed, right?
No, that's all part of this. It's completing up now. They're wrapping up now.
Okay, because the breakdown we got earlier today showed a top level number with fire suppression. Then there was the Jensen Hughes study for 5,000. And then there were individual breakdowns, budgeted items associated with this project.
Yeah,
Right.
the top project was the security. That's the one that's closed.
Okay,
That's
so
right, sorry.
I guess my question is, if the award to Aalborg was for $6.5 million, why are we showing a budgeted breakdown on hazardous material removal, hazardous material inspection? So I'm just confused that wouldn't be included in his original bid.
This breakdown was a breakdown of the budget when we start the process. So we have typically it's a certain percentage construction and then other soft costs. So these are the soft costs, meaning the consultant, the material removal, that's all part of that. So we always leave that in the budget. So if Allbog's contract had come in and didn't include the hazmat material of the roof, then we had it outside. If his budget, not Allbog, but any of the general contractors you had chosen, if that had come in much higher and came in $1 million over what was estimated, then we had that to roll up into it. So this particular budget represents what was anticipated for this project. When this project closes, which is the HVAC, the roof suppression, the fire suppression, there will be money saved on this project based on this budget. So
Right, no, I get that, and I think that's a good point. So if the bid came in higher, we had the hazmat and everything built in, so we could still do the job.
right,
But didn't we put the bid out
we did.
with hazmat removal?
Yes, but when the budget is actually built, that's not necessary. We don't know that. So this budget was built based on an MOA for an approval of that particular project. So the worst thing that can happen is we go in light and then the project comes in over budget, and then that line item for this MOA is over budget. So when this is the final MOA adjustment for this 36 million, that there won't be another adjustment because we're at the end and this is the final project.
Right, but in this committee's desire, for lack of a better word, to spread work out, now we're using 30% or thereabouts of that $36 million bond on one school?
This is the-
So he's saying the 10 million,
Of the 36.
right,
No, I
is
get it.
the 30% of the 36. So in other words, what he's saying is that when we had our original approval, the spread was to 16 different schools or
Right. No,
however we
I
have here. So
understand.
now he's saying a majority is going into Herman McCabe. And I think
Primarily, it's because there was so much savings over all of the projects within the 36 million. This last project, we had gone in for the MOA adjustment in April of, I believe, 2019 was the last adjustment.
2020.
Was it 2020? And we had an HVAC, when we did that one, it was like, okay, we really need some work on Herman McCabe for the HVAC. So that was the original request. And I believe at that time it was like 3,700. What is that the number? What did we have?
3.7?
Yeah,
3.7 million.
and then then we went out for the 234 and we had the roof and the fire alarm suppression in there, okay? Right, so it was a different bond.
Yeah,
When we had approached you and asked you, the most effective way to do this project is to do all three projects at once. It will save you a fortune in soft costs and all of those numbers. So Melissa, in the way she manages things, she was able to move this entire project into the 36 million because of previous savings.
right.
Okay, so that's why that number is so much higher. It's not because the other schools didn't get tons of work. It was because we were able to push this entire project into the 36 million versus having it in two different bonds. Does that,
It does, but I think as we're getting the information, it's becoming increasingly more difficult to decipher. Because if the intent was to combine the projects to save on soft costs, we shouldn't have, I don't think we should have budgeted $500,000 for hazardous waste material if that number is going to be significantly less.
well, when the estimates first came in prior to going out to bid, this project was almost $10 million, just what they anticipated, having the fire alarm suppression and the roof and all of the lighting and all.
Right,
So-
and that's why we passed.
And
And then it came back and said, listen, let's package all of this and we can save a ton of money. I want to make sure that we're not over budgeting for the sake of protecting ourselves when we eventually are going to leave money on the table.
well, the thing is, it ebbs and flows, right? So it was the economy of scale at that time. But had that been that same budget gone out a year later, it could have come in much higher. So you really do need to be a conservative budget. And that's partly why you were able to get so many projects in that 36 million, because we were able to save money and then roll them into another project. So we're never leaving money on the table, ever.
So of the 36 million, this is the last project.
Yes.
And once we close this out, what happens to the savings you're saying we're going to get off this?
So if I may, so this is really an approval authorization. It's not dollars per se. So if we are authorized to go to RIDE with $36 million, and that's allowable for reimbursement. So if we look at let me use, for example, it might be clearer if I use the 220. The city went out for bond for $220 million. We submitted a plan, stage 2, for 245, and they came back, RIDE came back and said, we're only allowing you 209 million, so we'll never spend the bond. We also have 25 million for other projects. So we can go in up to 25 million, but we may not spend it. If we finish the 25 million projects under, it just leaves authorization on the table, which allows us to do things like the new facilities initiative that's coming out, because that was my first question to RIDE was, how do we do this facilities if, because we have room in our authorization. So this number, this 36 million, is really just an authorization. If we didn't have a school capital fund above the bond, the $24 million bond, we wouldn't be able to do anything. So,
Right.
So basically what we're doing is, even in this project, the 36 million, the room that we had around, there was a piece of green that we used the $20 million. We used about, I think it was almost $2 million of the $24 million bond, but the authorization got applied to an older one because there was room left. There was money in that old authorization that never got spent, so they applied it to the old one so they could keep this free, because this doesn't expire until next year. We're going to be done, but if I'm doing any projects in the new authorization or those facility initiatives, if we get any approval when we come before you, if you approve to submit the applications, if we get approved to spend that, we actually can use the authorization. Now, if we were a district who didn't have authorization on the table, we would be limited to only a $500,000 approval for that facilities initiative that we're going to bring before you next week. Okay. So this is really just authorization.
Two more things and then I'll stop. But one, I think I would ask that you all put yourselves in, at least in this chair, because I've approved a $3 million spend there, a $6.5 million spend there, and now we're coming back and asking for authorization for 10 million. So it seems like, and my last thought on the breakdown was, in looking through the Gilbane proposal, it looked like Gilbane had set 729,000 of a $40 million construction budget for contingencies. And on this project, we're talking about a $9 million spend with an $833,000 contingency. So the two projects' contingencies don't seem to reconcile with me.
Sure. I think these are excellent questions, and what I'm taking away from this as sort of team leadership is just being more clear about getting financial reports that are easily understood by everybody. Because I think, Mr. Charbonneau, all those questions are excellent. I would say that they are comparable, and by that I mean the 700,000 and change allowance that Gilbane is holding is a by right cushion for the CM only to cover any errors on their part that is typical of a CM at risk contract and is set contractually at 2%. Having said that, we have around $5 million of owner contingency as well. So there is significant contingency and cushion. I suspect it's just the way that we're presenting the financial reports. They could be more clear so that everyone can just understand them as they're reading them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and listen, it could be on this end too. I'm not saying that it's necessarily all in how the information's being delivered.
Yep.
It may be my lack of being able to grasp it. But when I see these things, it almost jumps off the page to me that it doesn't look right.
Sure.
And
Yeah,
that's
between the work that we're doing and Melissa's financial and auditing skills, I assure you it is. And so again, my takeaway is we're going to find a way to make it just easier to digest.
So in fairness to the committee and your questions, it's not on you. What you're seeing before you is really the final roll-up of what goes to RIDE. So in fairness to you, we have these big spreadsheets that we work on when we meet in our office and stuff like that. So maybe what we need to do is we need to bring that down for your viewing. What you're seeing before you, in fairness, is you're seeing the rolled-up document that gets signed and approved.
Okay, I'm good. Thank you.
Mr. Knight?
Derek, you just said something I didn't understand. You said you had $2 million in additional older contingencies?
I'm not 100% sure I understand what you're referencing, so I'm going to ask you some questions and then make sure I understand so I can answer it, Mr. Knight. So there was a comment about umbrella authorization from the state and then open authorization for $2 million that allowed the district to tap into that authorization, freeing room for future projects that the state has already approved. And so that's almost like, if you will, a layer of monopoly money where it's not necessarily exactly tied to actual dollars spent. It is tied to a broad authorization from the state that then you spend actual dollars to get to that. So that was one thing, if that was what you were referencing. If you were referencing the other thing I was talking about with contingency, it's that in the Gilbane GMP, there are a couple of buckets that we have included contingency. There is an owner's contingency bucket within the GMP that's $4.7 million and change. And we control that. We, the school department, you all control that. There is, in addition to that, about $700,000 of contingency that Gilbane will control. And that's basically their safety net because they're giving you a guaranteed maximum price. Did I answer?
No.
No. Try again.
You're saying we got an umbrella, you're talking $2 million in contingencies. Now, as I understand contingencies, it's money that will be spent if something comes in over cost. You're not saying that. You're saying something totally different.
So
you're saying it's $2 million that we haven't spent. So now we've used it for something else.
That applies if we're talking about part A of the description I just gave. Is that what you're interested in, the RIDE authorization? I need to understand the question better to respond. Going. Sure. But which $2 million? I suspect I've made it worse than better.
2 million or the 5 million, I think he's asking. The Gilbane 5 million or the 2 million from RIDE?
He made a statement that we had a $2 million contingency that we spent. Where?
Sure. So
no, not sure where.
Yeah, right. I can explain it. This is going to be fairly complex though, so I'm going to go slow, and then I'll do it again or try if it doesn't make sense to everyone. So we have actual physical dollars that are approved to be spent. Some of them are bond and some of them are capital, right? And Melissa has general ledgers that account for absolutely every penny that is spent. In addition to that, in order to have access to housing aid reimbursement, we basically have to have a duplicate ask in addition to the cash we have on hand, either through bonding or capital from the state that says the state has authorized that as you spend all those pennies and dollars, you have this umbrella authorization up to 24 million or 36 million or whatever it is. At one point along the way, within one of our authorizations, we've often over the years put a bond request in and a capital request in. And like for the years, for instance, where we had PAYGO and we were initially presented with that huge check, if people remember that, we had a bond authorization and we had a capital authorization, which is just cash. We did all of the projects and we did as many as we could with cash, but eventually we had more open authorization from the state than we had cash to do projects. So we continue along and do the next bond and refill our bank account with new cash, but we still have this open authorization from an old request to ride long, long ago. The $2 million example is essentially a new project comes in with the new bond and new cash, and we take some 2 million of that and apply it to an old approval under the RIDE authorization, which frees up additional authorization with a later expiration date. Does that make sense? Is there?
You get the authorization. RIDE cannot authorize money that we're gonna spend.
I think Attorney Connolly wants to speak.
Want to take a shot at it?
Yeah.
If I'm wrong, there, throw something at me.
Yep.
My understanding is that RIDE has given us different total authorization levels over time. An older authorization was expiring. And so we wanted to move funds from the expiring authorization to use the entirety of that authorization in a manner that allowed us to maintain the most amount of our authorization as possible, as long as possible.
Correct.
So the $2 million isn't being spent, it's maintaining the authorization to a later date in case it does need to be spent in the future.
Correct.
Everything that is going forward in all of these different asks, has it come before the school committee
Yes.
to be approved? That is so everything that we're seeing here in this document has come before the school committee for approval. It's just a matter of which bond it's being applied to. And currently, you are coming before the school committee to say, we would like to apply this work that you approved to this bond. But the approval of the work is happening separately, and everything is coming before the school committee to approve, correct?
Yeah, every dollar
Thank you.
comes before you twice. Once for the authorization and once for the actual spend.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Charbonneau?
But I want to be clear, because I think we need to be careful here. What came before the school committee for Kirvin McCabe was a $6.5 to $7 million bid. This is for approval of 10 million.
Authorization.
Well, and
Right.
we're gonna, split the language, but it's everything in here. I'm not so sure that I'm crazy about long-term, and I may be off base, but commingling bond money from one bond authorization that was voted on by the voters into another bucket of a different bond?
Sure, yeah, let me further clarify. So we are not actually commingling typically the physical dollars. What we are commingling is a green light from the state in 2018 and then 2020 and wherever. So we're commingling a conceptual approval from the state. Your money is very much separate in each of its own general ledgers, and you approve all of that. Does that help?
It does. I think it's, yeah.
And we'll continue to try and make this easier. Admittedly, all of these questions are incredibly technical, and the financial piece is frankly incredibly technical. But it's important that we're able to communicate it in a clear way. So we're gonna keep trying.
Yeah, because I think all of what's been said, and we've all worked together for a lot of years. It all starts to intersect, and it gets very confusing to follow to the end.
Pawtucket probably has the most organization right now, even if all the is going on, because you have your old, you close out a $46 million that was here. Then we have a $36 million one. We originally had an $8 million one, and now we have a 234. And you guys are talking about the unified school, which could be however many more millions. So I don't think there's a district out there that has that extensive amount of authorizations going on, because they're good for 5 years. We've done them, we've put out new ones like in 3 years.
Yeah.
So they're overlapping the authorizations.
All right, I'm good. I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Here's my problem.
Sure.
You're saying we had a $36 million bond, The voters approved 24 million.
We have a $36 million approval.
From right, the voters approved 24.
Yeah, and then we had 12 in capital.
Where did we get the 12?
So the 12 was part of the stage 1 and stage 2, and then those projects come before you.
Where did that money come from?
The monies that we've been building the school capital reserve from each year.
We've got $12 million in the school capital
We
fund.
don't have $12 million, we get 83.6% back, so we can use money and it goes back into the
Right, but
fund.
we don't have that money.
Right, and they know we don't have that money, because what you do is you do your capital project, you get reimbursed, and then the money goes back in, and then you reuse the reimbursement. So a $12 million, we only actually spend 17% or 16.5%.
The whole thing is, we're still spending $12 million that the voters didn't approve.
No,
No.
no. So
Wait,
that-
the voters only
The
approve
voters
bonds.
approved $24 million.
Right, you approve the capital reserve, it's the school's capital reserve. We don't spend anything without school committee approval.
We didn't have a $12 million capital reserve.
Yeah, we do. We have money in capital reserve that we use little projects at a time. We might spend $1 million, and then we get our 83% back, and it goes back into the capital reserve.
That takes 5 years.
No, it doesn't take 5 years, because we've been using PayGo. PayGo's another method. People think that's a grant. It's a method where you can put the money in and you get it all back in 30 days. Yeah.
These are excellent questions. They're all just incredibly technical.
Yeah, I know it's technical, but it's,
Right.
you know, how do we've got a credit card going is what you're telling me.
No, we don't have a credit card. We have no access to cash. We don't have a credit card. We do not have access to bank accounts. We have none like that, nothing like that. Everything goes through whatever you guys approve, and then it's paid out in the checks that the city cuts. We have a school capital reserve that you, in this committee, vote on when we have surpluses or we have savings that we move over to the capital reserve line.
I understand that, but you're telling me we spent, or we weren't authorized to, we were authorized for 24 million in the bond, and you're telling me we're spending 36 million.
Yeah, you don't, the bonds are what get authorized by the voter. The school committee approves to spend capital projects.
But we can't spend 12 million without approval.
Yeah, so we're not. I think, Mr. Knight, and to the group, what might be really helpful is sometimes at the beginning of relationships or projects, and it's just been a while, I kind of storyboard how the state funding and finance works against how your actual cash and capital work. And if you're open to it, I'd love to kind of do a presentation at a future meeting that just talks about kind of like baseline how the financial system works with the state. Because some of these questions I think are fairly easy answered, but maybe better for me to both you explain and then you to understand in kind of like a visual presentation. And I'd be delighted to do that.
I would appreciate that. I think the committee would as well. Just definitely walking through the state reimbursement process, how our capital fund functions to go out and then how it comes back in, and maybe working with Ms. Devine on that to actually show some actual over the past year, how that might have worked, just timeline wise, to show how that account basically grows and wonderful.
Yeah, I think it could be really helpful.
And if you could include I know that this is going to be looking back, but I know I've been on this committee for 6 years. I know I've approved multiple capital, just like when, every time we've approved it, how much money we put in and when those votes came. Thank you. Any further questions on, Mr. Knight?
What's the $775,000 for Winters Elementary School approved for?
On the MOA?
Sorry, say that again.
Yeah,
This one right here.
in the MOA.
That was when we probably did the security before the, because this was done in 2017. So the bill was done.
Yeah, that was prior to.
That
Yeah.
was the security, which you received, and you saved all that equipment.
Right, yeah, anything that was done kind of emergency basis before the group went out and looked at Winters and decided it was a candidate for demo.
Okay.
Seeing no further discussion, Ms. Listy, please take a roll call on the MOA Amendment Number 4, reallocation of funds.
Mr. Charbonneau?
Yes.
Mr. Knight?
Yes.
Mr. Larby?
Yes.
Mr. Marino?
Yes.
Ms. Doobie?
Yes, the motion carries 5-0. Next, we have school committee policy, first passage, BEDD, rules of order. Mr. Larby?
Thank you, Chairwoman. Before you today, I bring forth first passage policy BEDD, which is the school committee governance and operations, rules of order. The previous book and system we was using, rules of order, was Sturgis revised. That no longer exists, and it has been updated to a new name, which is the American Institute of Parliamentarians Standing Code of Parliamentary Procedure. Another addition to this policy is the last line, as may be amended or updated anytime, which allows us to not have this policy come back before us, or if there is a updated edition that comes out in a year or two or a couple of years.
Motion approved. Second.
Then a motion to approve the amendment to BEDD by Mr. Charbonneau, was seconded by Mr. Marino. Mr. Knight?
So we're replacing Sturgis as our code of parliamentary rules?
So it's not necessarily a replacement, it's that Sturgis has changed the name of their procedure. So the new name is what's listed in front of you. So it's the same thing, there's no rule change.
If I may, it's essentially just a rebranding of the same set of rules. It's the most updated version. They've just given themselves a different title. So we're not replacing or changing from Sturgis. It's just the most recent version of Sturgis. And presumably some PR company decided that it would be better if they give themselves a different name.
There's been a motion to approve. It's seconded. I see no further discussion. Ms. Listy, please take a roll call.
Mr. Charbonneau?
Yes.
Mr. Knight?
Yes.
Mr. Larby?
Yes.
Mr. Marino?
Yes.
Ms. Doobie?
Yes, the first passage carries 5-0.
Motion adjourned.
There's been a motion to adjourn by Mr. Charbonneau. It's been seconded by Mr. Marino. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned at 7:54. Yeah.